In Romans chapter 12, the Apostle Paul gives a lot of instructions. Unlike other parts of Romans, which cover theological explanations, Romans 12 is all about putting things into practice. About 10 years ago, the church I served at the time decided to print off the list of things Paul talks about in Romans 12 and hand them out to people on their way out of church on Sunday. The goal was to take that list home and see how our lives could illustrate those things. While not everyone agrees on how to understand some of the instructions he gives, I want you to notice how chapter 12 ends. There we find these words: "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." From time to time, maybe you've heard about someone who started out really wanting to do good, really wanting to make a difference, and yet the fight they engage in begins to change them. And at some point, they fall away in some way. Some may find themselves demonstrating the same patterns and behaviors that they themselves are out to change in other people. Others are so offended by something that they think the best way to combat evil is by, combat, by striking out, by going on the attack. But when followers of Christ do this, it usually ends in disaster. Let me risk using an example from the world of politics. Let's say we like candidate A, but others like candidate B, the opponent. Now, normally we tell ourselves we are decent people and we would not strike out against others. But here's what we tell ourselves: candidate B and all who support candidate B are so nasty that the only way to deal with those people is to get downright dirty, to fight fire with fire, to use any means necessary to defeat the opposition. All the while, we get blinded to the fact that there's a lot rubbing off on ourselves and that we are no better than the worst actors on the other side, though we tell ourselves we are much more noble. When we do this, we are returning evil for evil. And of course, when this happens in the world of politics, people get away with it, and it might get short-term results, but the longer-term results in the people who do these things will be disastrous. Romans 12:21 says, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." A few verses before that, Paul says, "Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them." When we actually do this, we have to depend on God's grace, because we quickly discover that we are not up to the task. But to neglect this teaching would be a tragedy for those who follow Christ. Today, I invite you to notice how God is inviting you to overcome evil with good. Where are those sensitive areas in your life that tempt you to strike out in anger, in bad behavior, or in resentment? How can you bless someone you don't really like very much? All the great teaching in Romans really comes down to this: are we ready to live differently than other people? If so, then we are invited to the slow, steady work of overcoming evil with good.